Good evening and welcome to Candid Conversations. This evening we are talking about realigning families. Recently it was Mother's Day and Father's Day is coming up. But how can we be able to realign ourselves back in our family relationships, especially after going through bitter experiences, painful experiences where mothers do not relate so well with their daughters or their sons, and fathers do not see eye to eye sometimes with their sons and daughters? Where do we begin in the journey of realigning our families? And tonight we are joined by none other than Judy Mzugu Jabali, who is a Kingdom Life Coach. She has been here before and we are honored to have her once again. Karibu Judy.
Asante sana, nashukuru.
So glad that you made time for us. I know you have a busy schedule, so we do not take it for granted.
Thank you so much.
That you made time together with your husband.
Thank you.
To come.
Yes.
So let's begin in terms from Mother's Day.
Yes.
Most of us love our mothers,
yes.
but sometimes our mothers have gone through experiences, and your own story is a story that helps us see that mothers can be wounded,
yes.
and in turn they can end up hurting their own children.
That's true.
Because of something they've gone through, but they have not healed.
Yes.
Where do we begin the journey of realigning families?
Where do we begin the journey of realigning families? I think when we think about realigning families, then we have to see ourselves, Tess, as being future mothers. We have to see ourselves as touching generations. And for me, every time I look at it, then I have to look at and say, we have to begin by taking our own healing journey by ourselves as individuals. And I'd like to look at the Bible, and if we could look at Ruth chapter 1 from verse 20 to 21, then we see there the Bible says, and she said unto them, speaking, Naomi speaking, she said unto them, call me not Mara, Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. And then she goes on to say, I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. I want you to realize that Naomi was in the house of God, but she left full. Meaning that she was in this place. Something happens to you when you are worshiping and you're full.
Tell us about that.
You worship, but really there is no intimacy because you don't have a real hunger for God. Realize that by the time Naomi was leaving the house of bread, she had a husband, she had children. And I want to believe that she was a woman of means, and that's why they could actually afford to leave when time was hard in this place. And yet that is true for many of us, Tess, where we define ourselves by my husband, we define ourselves by my children, we define ourselves by our status. This was a woman with a pedigree, she was a Jew. We define ourselves even by the money that we have, by the jobs that we have. But yet Naomi, in going to Moab, enters into a place of wilderness, where now she loses her husband, she loses her sons, she loses a provision, and that's why it was the hunger that was drawing her back to the house of bread. And so I want us to realize that the first thing that Naomi does is that she comes into contact. She collides with her past. She collides with Bethlehem. And so for us, even for us to begin that journey, is not to go us back necessarily where we were physically born, but it is to go back in our minds, in the picture, in the imagination of our minds, that we can begin to remember what we looked like before every hurt, every pain, every bitterness, every loss happened to us. Naomi had to come to that place of asking and saying, no, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. I am bitter. What bitterness are we dealing with, Tess? We have to come to that place where we remember who we were before, and we see ourselves for who we are now and face up to our truth.
When you take the example of Naomi,
yes.
she left Bethlehem with her husband
yes.
and 2 sons.
Yes.
Only to go to the foreign land,
yes.
and she lost her husband
yes.
and her 2 sons.
Yes.
So this is a grieving woman.
Yes.
What would you tell women out there who have gone through so much pain. And as you say, she comes back and she says, don't call me Naomi. I believe Naomi means pleasant.
Yes.
But now she comes back and she wants to be called Mara, meaning bitter.
Yes.
And I believe that it's a story of a lot of women. Not necessarily they have lost through death.
Yes.
But they have lost through miscarriage.
Through relationships.
Through relationships.
Through bad jobs.
Where do they begin that journey? Sometimes there's even a crisis of faith, because Naomi is even changing what she believes about herself because of the experience she has gone through.
Yes.
So what you were saying about going back to remember who we were before,
yes.
Where do we start that journey from?
I believe it's in accepting the wilderness, Tess. You know, many times the gospel has been preached as a solution away from the wilderness, and yet sometimes God will use the wilderness to cause us to collide with our true identity. Realize that Naomi, of course, she had everything, and even as she's coming into this place of having to face up with her past, then you'll realize that something changes, not because she changed, the circumstances have changed, but it is something within her that begins to change. Where yes, sometimes you have faced a broken marriage. Sometimes you have faced a broken relationship. Sometimes, yes, your finances have gone wrong. Sometimes your business has gone wrong. And yes, it is bringing you into that place of emptiness. But I just want to encourage, whether it is a man or a woman, that wilderness, that place of brokenness does not necessarily mean that it's going to be the end of the road for you. If only you can come into that place where you can allow yourself, because the thing that most of us do is to cover it with a carpet and act like everything is okay. We never really deal with our emotions. We never really deal with our wounds. And because we didn't deal with our emotions, because we didn't deal with our wounds, we tend to bleed on other people. Realize that before Naomi comes to this place, she tells Orpah and Ruth, just stay behind, don't follow me, I have nothing to give you. She felt she had attached all her worth on these external things.
Let's look at the relationship between Naomi and her daughter-in-law.
Yes.
You know, this is a relationship, especially, I don't know whether it's just in the African culture, but a lot of mother-in-laws not necessarily have a good relationship with their daughters-in-law.
Yes.
But we see that this was a woman, though she was hurting, she was willing to hold these women and tell them, I have nothing more to give you. Leave them at a good place. You know, someone might be bitter and feel like, you're the reason why my sons died. But this woman allows Orpah to go, but
yes.
Ruth to go with her.
Yes.
So I look at Naomi as someone who embraces a daughter-in-law. To the extent that they go back home,
yes,
and she helps her even to start her life again with Boaz.
Yes.
For people who are starting life again because of one reason or another, what's your advice?
Okay, for me, first and foremost, before Naomi was able to change her heart and begin to see Ruth not as a widow, but to see and begin to see her the potential in her, she had to take her own healing journey. She had to confound her truth. And when she confounded her truth and was able to see herself correctly, and remember that she went back to the house of bread. She went back to the house of God. It talks to us about really going back to having an intimate relationship with God. And granted, just like you said, sometimes the strained relationships that people are having, even with their mothers-in-law, is not necessarily that the mothers-in-law are bad people. Trace back, most mothers-in-law are never treated well themselves. And because they never healed, any wound that you never heal from, you will tend to hurt another person. Any mother, any woman who has not healed will tend to hurt other women around her. And that removes the conversation, brings us to the conversation test, where many people say that women don't know how to interact with one another. It's not true. It is because the women that we mostly encountered did not heal. And because they did not heal, and did not go back into the place of intimacy with God, because as you go back into the place of intimacy with God, then he begins to fill you with his love. And when he fills you with his love and your soul is healed, then you're able to love others out of the overflow.
Let's look at the fathers.
Yes.
Father's Day is coming up.
Yes.
I think sometimes we celebrate mothers so much.
Yes.
But Father's Day passes so quickly.
Yes.
How do we start celebrating our fathers for what they've done in our lives?
In fact, let me be honest with you. My personal thoughts has been that, of course, who throws the party? Let's agree. Within the home, who organizes the party?
It's the mothers.
It is the mothers.
Yeah.
You get.
Yeah.
And so because we are also dealing with people also, they themselves who had not also healed, so therefore we were celebrating, honestly, we were celebrating brokenness. And that's why we continued transferring brokenness from generation to generation. But you know what? Now we are saying, no, it is time for the women, the pillars of the home, to find healing. Realize that as Naomi herself was going through her situation and was coming into this place, the house of bread, where she encounters and begins to say, no, call me this, and then now she confronts her truth and now gets into the house of bread, what then happens is that her own perspective, the way she treats Ruth, changes. She then now does not just see Ruth just as a daughter-in-law. First and foremost, before that, remember that Naomi remembers her own identity. Remember, this is the same woman who says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. But now she says, I remember my identity. I have a kinsman redeemer called Boaz. We do have, you understand?
Yeah.
So once you heal as a woman, what happens? You remember your identity. And when she remembered her identity, because her own identity is intact, then now she's able to love on Ruth. She begins, then her eyes open to see Ruth's potential. More than just seeing her as a widow, she begins to see her as a wife, as that she has capacity to become a wife. What happens to Naomi? She becomes a solution giver even for Boaz. When a woman is healed, they become solution givers even within their families.
So how do they help the fathers in their healing journey? As you've called them, they are part of the pillars. I believe the man is a pillar, the woman is a pillar. Together they become one and they build up a family. So let's say the woman finds her healing place. But as we know, men are known to keep things to themselves. It is said that when they tell their boys out there, they are told, kangumu, wanaume ni kuvumilia, you know. But they still also need healing. So what's the role of the woman in helping the man in his healing journey of becoming healed and a good head of the home?
That will take us to John chapter 15, I believe, verse 12, where the word of God says that as I have loved you, love one another as I have loved you. Because you have encountered the love of God, because you have encountered the truth of your healing process, what then happens is as you continue in intimacy with God, then you pour out of the overflow. And you are able then to extend grace to your spouse. Not because they are perfect, but because you yourself have taken a journey. You're also able to open their eyes sometimes to be able to see their own gaps in a loving way.
That makes sense. It makes sense. I'm just feeling like in terms of men, how do women get them to open up, or society open up on their issues?
Sometimes it's observing. You understand? This is your spouse, or this is someone that you have been around with. So you can also be able to see that there's a way that they are sensitive about issues. There's a way that maybe because of where they came from, there are things that they are carrying. Because you yourself have taken the journey, it helps you to have sensitivity. It helps you to have wisdom, to then begin to see what might also be affecting your significant other. What also might be affecting the people around you. That's what healing does to us. And remember that as women, we are not only called as nurturers for our own biological children. Sometimes we will be nurturers even for children of other people that we have not necessarily birthed. But taking the inner journey helps us to have sensitivity for our spouses, for the people around us. And then you realize that going back to Naomi, she became a blessing even to Boaz. She was able to see Boaz's needs.
That's true.
You get it?
Yeah.
And she was able to guide Ruth, so that then tell Ruth, this is what you do, this is what you do, for you to be able to achieve that which you are needed. She began to see potential in Ruth. Only a healed woman can be able to do that.
That's great. Let's look at the children in the family.
Yes.
Now that the mother is healed, and let's just say they're in a journey, because I believe it's a journey step by step.
That's true.
How do they reconcile with their children? Perhaps things happen in families.
Yes.
Parents may not see eye to eye because of what a child has done from, childhood, just being rebellious, especially at the teenage age. How can children reconcile, especially mature children, not very young children? We tend to give them more grace. But how can children reconcile with their parents so that they can be realigned, since we are talking about aligning families?
Yes. I think the truth is, even when you look at it in the context of a marriage, the woman is coming from her own form of dysfunction. The man is coming from their own form of dysfunction. And therefore, as we talk about aligning families, we have to understand that both parties have to give each other space to be able to heal within the context of the marriage. That's true. And once you're able to extend, first of all, yourself grace, extend your spouse grace, so that they heal as you heal, what will then happen? Oneness in marriage then is able to come. The truth is, Tess, on the wedding day, all you have are rings and certificates.
That's true.
Oneness has to be worked on. And the thing that we have been missing is because we honestly didn't talk about the place of people being broken. We honestly didn't talk about people coming and lending each other grace, so that the two parties can be able to heal. And as the two parties then heal, they're able to then also help their children to become better. Why? Because just like Naomi, you begin to see potential in the next generation.
I know you run a program, the Realignment Program.
Yes.
How do you help families get through in that journey we are talking about of alignment?
Of alignment,
Yes.
as far as family is concerned.
Yeah.
I think for me, having taken our own journey, by the way, Tess, I also healed within my marriage.
Wow.
I came broken. And so I have also understood. And I remember one time talking with my husband about rejection. And my husband asked me, do you know how difficult it was to live with you for the first 6 years?
What?
6 months.
Oh, 6 months.
6
not
months.
6 years.
Not 6 years, 6 months.
I would have been, he really persevered.
No. 6 months.
Yeah.
But, and he also told me, now I understand why people divorce within the first year of marriage.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
Because everyone assumes that in the first year you're having a honeymoon.
Yeah, actually it is true. Most people assume that. Yeah.
And so when you get into a marriage situation and you don't find the honeymoon, you think that you're mismatched. Far from it. It's because you're carrying your brokenness. I was carrying rejection. And so because of the rejection I was carrying, I had an over expectation of my husband. That you expect something only that God can be able to give to you. And so I had to heal fast. As I healed fast for myself, then now, when you're healed, Tess, something happens to your intimacy with God.
Tell us about that personal journey of healing, the way you're talking about your intimacy with God.
Yes.
That now helped you to heal so that you can have a better intimate relationship with your husband.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so remember how my own rejection journey came. It started at childbirth. I was born number 4, and so the 3 children before me were girls. So my mother expected a boy. When I turned out to be a girl, my mother at first rejected to breastfeed me. She did not even take me for vaccination.
Wow.
So I didn't have whooping cough, polio, or any other. I mean, really, I was exposed to every sort of.
And you didn't get sick?
I didn't. I am here by the grace of God.
You know, that's a miracle.
You
are a miracle.
I believe that with all my heart. And I know that God sustained me because he had a greater purpose with me.
Amen.
And so, growing up in such a setting, I remember, and then again, had a different personality from my sisters. My sisters are still today, are a bit laid back. I am more strong-willed, more independent-minded. And so I was kind of a more difficult child to control. Not because I'm a bad person, but really it has to make sense for me before we agree on a direction. And so I grew up struggling to find my sense of identity, even within the context of my own family. And so as I grew up, I think then because of that, when someone suffers rejection, they tend to attract rejection over and over again.
A cycle.
It becomes a cycle, yes, until you heal. And so when I got into marriage, and I found finally acceptance, I guess, and found someone who came so close to me, that was the time test that I was able to understand that I used to have anger, I had suffered cycles of rejection, and it was only then that I understood, or God led me by His Spirit to understand that this whole problem that I was dealing with came from my childbirth. And that was the time that I began then to see life through the lens of my mother's situation. Because my own mother had been forced into marriage.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
So for her, having been forced into marriage, one, her dreams had already been shattered. Two, she was here hoping that at least in those days, a boy comes to validate your position. Now, this last card that she has also let her down. Then I also began to see that my own mother faced a lot of rejection within also her marital family.
So she only extended what she already had to
Exactly.
you. Okay.
Exactly.
So, but you broke the cycle by healing. How was that journey of healing? That's the part.
Yes, now the journey of healing started with now what I was telling you, colliding with your past. My mother wasn't there by the time I was reconciling this. She was long dead and buried.
Oh.
Yes.
So you couldn't even go to ask her?
Oh no, I knew these stories, but I never knew that this is what had affected me. And so I talk about the safe space because then I was able to open up to my husband and tell him this is what I carried. He allowed me that safe space and I was able then to begin to heal. So that vulnerability to him allowed us then to come to a place of connection.
Sounds great.
You get it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where your healing came?
That's where my healing began, yes.
So today you are a healed woman.
Oh, glory to
helping
God.
Other women and men
other
to
men
heal.
and women, because Tess, the greatest thing that happens when you are carrying wounds is that you never are able to rise up to your fullest potential.
Oh no.
Yes, I was a gifted woman. Even as a child, I was a speaker. As a child, I was a writer. But can you imagine all those gifts went? Sorry?
They were rekindled when you healed?
They were rekindled when I healed. I then discovered my writing. Then I discovered my speaking. And so for me, the burden, even as you talk about realignment, the realignment program and realigning families, the burden then became for me. How many other people are out there, their gifts and abilities lost just because they are carrying wounds?
Yeah.
And as far as marriage is concerned, we also have had to take a journey, a healing journey for both of us. And so we have come up with a program called the Reconnect Program. And this is it. This is how it has come about. We realized that sometimes a wife would come for the program. And then after they came for the program, they would recommend to their husbands. And so when their husbands also came and they were able to see first and all themselves correctly, and they were able now to empathize with their wives, what happens is that these couples then were able then to come to the place of oneness. Because unless you're vulnerable to yourself, then vulnerable to your spouse, you cannot have connection. Let me tell you, that is the greatest desire for God in marriage.
For people to connect
For people to connect and be one. When you connect and you're one, and you're standing on Christian values, what will happen? You are able then to raise children and bring out their potential. And you're able then to go out, even as a couple, even as individuals, to do great exploits in the marketplace.
Great insights. Even as I see that our time is running out,
Yes.
I want us to just look at the rebellious child, because we know that sometimes even a father can be a pastor.
Yes.
And the mother is a deacon or just in the church.
Yes.
But a child goes wayward. How do we bring back this child with love back to the fold?
Back to the fold. I think the first thing is that we have to address the what is it called, the soul. Sometimes, even as pastors' children, they are killed by their over expectation. It's almost like they're never allowed to truly experience their childhood. They're never allowed to truly experience and express their individuality. So we have to deal with their brokenness. What is the sense of emptiness that they are feeling within, and encourage them to find their true identity, notwithstanding the fact that they have societal pressure, because that is what tends to bring them down. So we have to help them to find their identity, and once they find their identity, it then becomes easier for them to again find their own journey with God, because they will also go through their own wilderness where they don't seem to understand this God of their father, and we have to allow them to experience their own wilderness and experience their own intimacy with God. And sometimes that will look like rebellion, yet it is in that wilderness that they will come back into their house of bread.
That's great. Give us your parting shot, even as you speak to families on realignment, and tell them what platform you offer for such things.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm here to encourage every married man, even let's start with the single person, to tell you that there is hope for you to be whole, for you to be able to connect with another person holistically, in spirit, in soul, in body. And that tells you why the body of Christ is always insisting, do not be unequally yoked with another. It is not us putting unnecessary pressure on you. We know where it goes, because it is important for you to be spiritually aligned with another person. I want now to speak to the couples. For you as a woman, for you as a man, it is possible for you to find healing even within the context of your marriage, to find healing from wherever you came from, to allow and extend grace to your spouse so that they too can find healing, and by the grace of God, both of you can come together and raise a godly generation that will have a great impact in the world, all to the glory and to the honor of His name.
Thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome.
Together with your husband, for making time. I believe people have been blessed, encouraged, guided, that we start with our intimacy with God.
Yes.
And when that is sorted out, we are healed enough to even relate with other people in our families.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Judy, for making time together with your husband. We appreciate your sentiments.